Hi, friends. Hi, yogis. This is Jenny Wise, the founder of WiseMind Yoga, Science, and Soul, saying hi to the Instagrammers. And I am just really grateful and excited to be talking to you today about a really important topic right now, which is stress and anxiety during COVID. Okay, so we all deal with stress and anxiety all the time, but everyone as a collective has a raised sense of fear, anxiety, grief, sadness, potentially anger, frustration, a lot of different difficult emotions that are floating around. So today we're going to focus on dealing with stress and anxiety in COVID. So I'm going to let the Facebook groups know to let us know where you're joining from. Same thing with Instagram. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about a brain hack to break the coronavirus anxiety and stress cycle. That's what we're going to cover today. So we don't want you to go down a coronavirus spiral. And here's what you can do to relieve your worries of keeping your family safe. And there's a lot of uncertainty about coronavirus. And so it's spreading anxiety through something called social contagion. Again, it's called social contagion, and this is a psychology term. So there's a way that we can minimize that, okay? Because our anxiety is contagious and our calm is contagious. Again, our anxiety and our stress is contagious and our calm is contagious. So tips for calming your coronavirus anxiety so that you can better care for others. And we want to try to start practicing mindfulness during the pandemic. If you've not tried mindfulness before, this is an amazing opportunity to try mindfulness. So if you are feeling extra anxiety these days due to coronavirus, you're not alone, okay? We all are feeling it more, again, as a global collective. And this pandemic has us facing more stress and more uncertainty. So again, this is a normal response. And at the beginning, in the first couple months, there was a lot of people, stockpiling toilet paper and other behavior patterns. And this is an example of social contagion, okay? So also, many of us might be asking, how do I keep from spiraling into a full-blown panic? Or how do I keep from not going into depression, okay? So here are some tools that I'd like to suggest. So there, of course, is trying meditation, prayer, exercise, yoga as coping skills, mindfulness, creating a mind, body, breath awareness, and creating a self-awareness of our thought patterns, okay? So the key to a lot of this is actually self-care so that you are taking care of yourself mentally and physically, okay? Mentally and physically. And you just hold on one second. So those are just a few tips on self-care. So anxiety, though, is a strange beast, right? Anxiety is actually a close cousin to panic, and they both are born from fear. So anxiety and panic are both born from fear. So fear's main evolutionary function, of course, is to keep us safe and to help us survive, right? And fear is the oldest survival mechanism that there is. And for example, fear lets us help to avoid dangerous situations in the future through a process called negative reinforcement. Okay. So, for example, if we step out onto a busy street, we turn our head, we see if a car's coming, and then we jump back to safety instinctively onto the sidewalk if there is a car coming. Okay. So, evolution has made this simple for us. So simple that we only have 3 elements in situations like this to learn. There's an environmental cue, there is a behavior, and a result. Again, there is an environmental cue, there is a behavior, and there is a result. And so sometime in the last million years, right, humans evolved into a new layer on top of our primitive survival brain, okay, called the prefrontal cortex, right? I call this the executive part of the brain. And it involved in creativity and planning. The prefrontal cortex helps us to think into the future. Prefrontal cortex actually gets strengthened during meditation. And I will talk about this more in our Unleash Success, Heal and Detox for Stress Masterclass series, how the neuroscience of meditation, and one of it is how we connect to our prefrontal cortex during meditation. So it predicts what will happen in the future based on past experience. So if information is lacking, our prefrontal cortex lays out different scenarios that might happen and guesses which are most likely going to happen, okay? So it does this by running simulations based on previous events that are the most familiar, okay? So when our prefrontal cortex goes offline, which is what happens when we're stressed or when we're anxiety, that means our prefrontal cortex, our executive brain, is not working. Okay, this is important. Another term for this is being an emotion mind. So again, you're emotionally dysregulated is another term, a psychology term for that. We are not alone, and when we're not able to make logical decisions. Like many of us are dealing with this right now, that we're all feeling like we're not making maybe the best decisions, because a lot of us are going into emotion mind, we're going into emotional dysregulation, we're going into anxiety and stress. And it's really hard to make healthy choices when we're in that state of mind, okay? So enter anxiety, right? Anxiety is defined as a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event, right? So there's that uncertainty with COVID, and something with an uncertain outcome. Okay, so again, COVID and this pandemic is the probably biggest opportunity that we're going to have to work through and process and use skills to work through stress and anxiety and uncertainty. So anxiety comes up when our prefrontal cortex doesn't have enough information to accurately predict the future. Okay. And when we see this right now, this is what we see right now with coronavirus. So scientists are racing to figure out the characteristics still of coronavirus so that we know precisely how contagious and deadly it is, and to respond and act accordingly. So this uncertainty abounds, right? So without accurate information, it's easy for our brains to spin out of control and to create stories of fear and anxiety, okay, and dread, and going to what we call catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is a psychology term where you go to worst case scenario, okay? So many of us are running around right now in fight or flight, and we're being triggered, we're emotionally dysregulated, we're anxious, we might have trauma that is unhealed family of origin wounds that's coming up for us. We might have trauma that we thought we had healed, or anxiety that we thought was gone, and it's coming to the surface. Because that is what happens when you're in this type of uncertain situation, okay? So I want to also be here to bring you self-awareness, okay? So when we're fueled by uncertainty, again, anxiety is also contagious, just like calm is contagious. So I want you to remember that phrase. So anyone on here, if you want to say hashtag calm, or hashtag if you're dealing with stress or anxiety, if you want to share that is an option. And just let us know if this is something that you feel like you're struggling with right now. So in psychology, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I'll definitely follow up with you. Thank you for the hearts. So in psychology, the spread of emotion from one person to the other is aptly termed social contagion. Okay, the spread of emotion, right? So this isn't just the spread of germs. This is the spread of emotion, okay? So our own anxiety can be cued or triggered simply by talking to someone else who is anxious, okay? So again, our own anxiety can be cued or triggered simply by talking to someone who is anxious. So the fearful words are like a sneeze landing directly on our brain, right? When someone's getting anxious and triggered. So to hack our brains and to break the anxiety cycle, we need to become self-aware of two things: that we are getting anxious or panicking, and what the result is. Again, to hack our brains and to break the anxiety cycle, we need to become self-aware of two things: that we are getting anxious or panicking, and what the result is, okay? So one kind of example of looking at the prefrontal cortex, I want to kind of jump back for a moment, is when the prefrontal cortex gets offline, it's sending us out of control and worries about everything, right? Whether our family members are going to get sick, whether our jobs are going to be affected. So Wall Street is a great example of a social contagion. Again, Wall Street is a great example of social contagion. So we watch the stock market spike and crash, and the stock indexes being a thermometer of how feverish our collective anxiety is at the moment, okay? So Wall Street has even something known as the fear index, or something they call VIX, which outstripped the 2008 financial crisis, okay, this week. So when we can't control our anxiety, that emotional fever spikes into panic, okay? So panic is defined as sudden uncontrollable fear or anxiety, often causing wildly unthinking behavior. Okay, so again, the example of people going out and buying toilet paper, like what happened when this first started back in March, is an example of people going into panic. Or the amount of times that you might have gone into the grocery store and there was no food there were many times that I walked into the grocery store and there was barely any produce left, for example. So we're overwhelmed by uncertainty and fear of the future. The rational parts of our brain, like the prefrontal cortex, it goes offline. It's not working. We're in emotion mind. So logically, we know that we don't need a 6-month supply of toilet paper in our what we call our rational mind, okay? But when we see somebody's cart piled high, the anxiety infects us and we go into survival mode. And that is what social contagion is. So how do we not panic? Too many times I've seen anxiety clients that try to suppress or think themselves out of anxiety. Okay, so unfortunately, both willpower and reasoning rely on the prefrontal cortex, which isn't available at critical moments when we're stressed or when we're in emotion mind, when we're in anxiety. So instead, I start by teaching them how their brain works, right? So the neuroscience of calming ourselves, the neuroscience of the stress response. And this is more what I'm going to talk about in our Unleash Success, Heal, and Detox Stress the week of September 14th. So that we can see uncertainty weakens the brain's ability to deal with stress, priming it for anxiety when fear hits, okay? But this is just the first step. This is just the self-awareness and the mind-body-breath connection. And then you go deeper into teaching yourself the tools of how you start to control your anxiety and your stress and your fear, okay? So again, we are putting ourselves in a place of uncertainty. So let me repeat this one more time. So to hack our brains, break the anxiety cycle, we need to become self-aware of two things. We are getting anxious or panicking and what the result is. Okay? So this helps us see if our behavior is actually helping us survive or in fact moving in the opposite direction, okay? So panic can lead to impulsive behaviors that are dangerous, okay? Impulsive behaviors that are dangerous. So anxiety is both acutely mentally and physically weakening and a slow burn that has more long-term health consequences. So the other thing that, again, I teach you in the Unleash Success, Heal, and Detox Stress is the mind and body effects of stress. And it makes us slow, it makes us sick, and it makes us stupid. And when I say stupid, I mean because the prefrontal cortex gets shut down. That's what I mean by that. So once we're aware of how unrewarding anxiety is, we can deliberately bring it into a bigger, better offer. So since our brains will choose more rewarding behaviors simply because it feels better, right? So the brain is going to go to the path of least resistance, or the pattern, the groove in the brain that it has created. So if we have created a behavior pattern of anxiety or catastrophizing or fear or being a stressaholic, then the brain is going to go to the path of least resistance. It's going to keep on playing out that behavior and put you in that loop until you break the cycle and you change it, okay? So we practice replacing old habitual behaviors, such as worry, with those that are naturally more rewarding. So for example, if you notice that you have a habit of touching your face right now, we can be on the lookout for when we act out that behavior. So for example, if we are starting to worry and we say, oh no, I touched my face, I'm gonna get sick. Instead of panicking, just take a deep breath maybe 3 deep breaths, maybe a third deep breath. And then you ask yourself, when was the last time I cleaned my hands? Okay. All right, I just washed my hands. Or wash your hands again after you realize you touched your face. So it's a great opportunity to practice mindfulness and pressing the pause button between stimulus and response. This is an amazing opportunity for us to train our brains and become samurai minds when it comes to coronavirus. So you can imagine like us against COVID, right? Like being warriors against COVID. Okay, that we can control our response to COVID. We get to control that. Okay, so just for taking a moment to pause and ask the question, we give our prefrontal cortex a chance to come back online and to do what it does best, which is think. So once the prefrontal cortex is just like a computer going offline, the prefrontal cortex goes offline when we're anxiety or stressed, and it goes into what we call emotion mind. So once we get the prefrontal cortex back online, then we are in what we call wise mind or logic mind. Okay, so then we can leverage certainty, right? If we just washed our hands and we haven't been out in public, the likelihood that we're going to get sick is pretty low. Okay, the more we can see the positive feeling and the effects of good hygiene and compare that to the negative feeling of uncertainty or getting caught in anxiety, the more our brains can naturally move forward to the former because it feels better. So for example, one of the habits that I've gotten myself in when I go to the grocery store, okay, so all of us, some of you might be having your groceries delivered. Some of you might be going to the grocery store still. So of course, I get my mask, I get all that ready, I get my list ready, I go to the grocery store. The first thing I do when I'm leaving the grocery store, if they have it out, or any store that I'm in that they have it out, is I grab the germ stuff, and I put it on my hands and I use it. If they don't have it out, or if they're out of it wherever I go, then I will wash my hands as soon as I get home. That's the very first thing I do. I have actually thought about getting some of that hand sanitizer and having it in my car so that I can, do my hands before I get home. But I don't go into catastrophizing or into a negative thought pattern of fear and anxiety and panic and doubt and worry, because that's not going to help me. Because the other part of this that's really important, as we mentioned earlier, is when you go into stress and anxiety, you are taxing your immune system. You are taxing your mental and physical health. You are taxing your adrenal system. And so that is not going to help us to stay healthy, right? So we have to really think about, is this taking away my energy, or is this giving me energy? Is this keeping me healthy, or could this potentially be draining my energy and make me more susceptible to getting sick? So just a food for thought. So how do I know that this works? So simple awareness training can reduce anxiety by 57%. Let me write that down. Simple self-awareness training can reduce our anxiety by 57%. So understanding these simple learning mechanisms will help keep us calm and carry on. I love that phrase, keep us calm and carry on. And this is how London dealt with uncertainty of constant air raids in World War II. So can you imagine, right, wherever you live, if you live in the United States, if you live in another country, can you imagine getting bombed every single day and the amount of anxiety and uncertainty that that would create? Like being in a war, right? And there's some people right now in the Middle East and other areas that do deal with that. We haven't dealt with that yet in the US, but just imagine what that would be like. They had to use these skills that I'm talking about. So instead of getting caught in anxiety or panic in the coming days, and whenever we feel uncertainty, when our prefrontal cortex comes back online, we can compare anxiety to what it feels like to be calm, okay? And to our brains, it's a no-brainer. It's simply a little practice so that the bigger, better offers become new habits. So it can be helpful to reframe coronavirus outbreak by using a tactic called temporal distancing, or focusing your attention on a longer time span. So let me give you an example of that. So temporal distancing. So what this does, for example, is you imagine what it might look like when you look back on these events in a year or even a few years from now. And think about where you want to be a year from now, where you want to be 2 years from now, right? So we're still being in the present moment, but we're allowing ourselves to also think into the future of where do I want to be in a year or 2 years from now. So those kinds of perspective broadening tools can really relieve emotions, okay? So you can also try putting the outbreak in historical context, okay? So we have experienced these types of things in our society before, and we've gotten through them. There's been other outbreaks. There's been other COVID-like outbreaks in the past. There's been Ebola and other outbreaks. So another step is to limit how much information you consume about the coronavirus outbreak, to try to find a balance between informed information to make decisions about your life, but not so overloaded with information that it becomes stressful. So meaning, you're not watching the news every hour of the day. You're not getting on and like counting how many new people have been diagnosed with coronavirus, right? That you have to limit your exposure to that information, because that's just going to feed the fear and anxiety and stress, okay? So when you get overloaded with information like that, it's just going to cause stress and anxiety. So again, what are some of the things that we use to not spiral into a full-blown panic? And that is using things like meditation, pranayama breath work. For those of you that are in the free Facebook group, I've got some videos that you can use that are free. And also on IGTV, I have a breathwork video as well. Using mindfulness, building your mind, body, breath awareness, and building awareness of the sensations in your body before it turns to stress or anxiety, okay? Yoga and exercise and self-awareness of thoughts. So let me go through just a few more tips on anxiety for COVID, okay? So if coronavirus scares you, that is normal, okay? So you are not alone. A pandemic is a fertile ground for those who suffer from anxiety, and this is a way that this can help manage it, Okay. So I just mentioned this. Number one is avoiding health-related news, right? You're not, we want to get up to date, but we need to do a little bit of a news detox, right? Where maybe we get on the news once a day, or maybe we turn off our notifications so we're not constantly being notified anytime there's an update about a coronavirus, okay? If you are really worried about getting updates, you can let your friends and family know that you're not going to be on the news and media as much, social media as much, and to let you know if there's something that you need to know, okay? You can let your friends and family know that. Number two is try not to seek constant reassurance. Again, try not to seek constant reassurance. And seeking reassurance can make you feel calmer in the short term, but it's temporary, okay? So your brain creates a feedback cycle where you become increasingly reliant on reassurance, which only forces to reinforce anxiety, okay? Number three is introduce a ban on Googling symptoms of coronavirus. So Dr. Google is not and will never be your friend, especially not when you are suffering from health anxiety, right? So if you have a tendency to get anxiety around health issues, it's not going to help if you Google. Same thing with message boards and forums. You want to try to remember not to maybe visit those as much, okay? Number four is try a countering technique. So this can be cognitive behavioral change exercise, which involves getting a persistent thought and what we call the courtroom treatment by confronting it with a rational counter statement. So again, this is called countering technique. So for example, if your persistent thought is something like, someone I love will die from this virus, you can counter it with factual statements, such as, actually, most people who get COVID are likely to make a full recovery. And that's assuming my mom, dad, and my sister will even catch it at all, okay? So my mother always says, just because you think something doesn't make it true. So that's a good way to replace the terminology. Number five, do some exercise outside, social distancing, or in home. So I have been talking about this since this quarantine started in March, about moving your body and stilling your mind. And I'm going to continue to talk about it, okay? Because it's really important to move the body, not only for anxiety and stress, but also for depression, okay? So even if you just start, shaking your body parts, like you literally can just kind of shake your arms, like you're kind of warming up. Exercise will get the adrenaline out of your system and channel the panic elsewhere. It'll move. Emotion is energy in motion. So emotions like sadness, anger, fear, grief, they get stuck in the body until we move them through. So whether that's yoga, whether that's walking, whether that's trying Tai Chi, whether that's running, whether that's doing a Zumba exercise, whether you do some kind of walking with somebody online. I actually started doing that at first. I was power walking with somebody online in my living room. And now I've started going out into nature 3 to 5 days a week. That is my way of getting out of the house. And sometimes I will do what I call a mindful walking meditation, where it's just quiet. And then other times I might be listening to music or something else while I'm walking. But being out in nature is very, very grounding. It's very grounding, okay? Number 6 is breathing and grounding exercises and meditation. So I've reviewed this. So from guiding yogic breathing to using a strong smell like lavender oil, you can actually use essential oils, which takes about 30 seconds for that message to go to your brain. And these grounding exercises can bring you back to reality, and it's grounding your nervous system. It's grounding your immune system, okay? So also, I have found by bending over and just touching my toes, just doing a forward fold actually helps with anxiety. You can just let the hands lay on the floor. You can grab opposite elbows. And then slowly standing up, starting at the base of the spine is beneficial, and it centers me. So for those of you that might have done some of my flows in the past, I do a lot of slow flow and a lot of movements that are 5 to 10 breaths. The reason why I do that is because it's grounding the nervous system. So when you hear me teaching a Sun A and say we're in a forward fold, and I'll slowly say, rise up 1 vertebrae at a time. Inhale, exhale, hands to heart center. Again, rising up, inhaling up 1 vertebrae at a time, okay? So you can look for examples online, but sometimes as simple as sitting on a floor can help. Like literally, you can sit on the floor, you can sit on a chair, you can sit on your couch. You don't have to be in a half lotus or a full lotus or a yogi pose. The WiseMind meditation method that we teach is that you can move. It's okay to move. And we don't teach meditation for monks. We teach meditation for modern day meditators, okay? So, if it hurts your back, sitting on the floor. Again, you can sit on a chair and meditate for 5 minutes. You also can sit and lean up against the wall with your back supported on the wall and your legs straight out if you have trouble with your knees and crossing your knees and sitting in easy seat. So those are just some examples, okay? So number 7, allow yourself a daily, quote, worry period. Allow yourself a daily worry period. Give yourself about a half an hour to worry about this to your heart's content, and then you have to let it go and do something else. So we use the term of mindfulness foundations of letting it go and letting it be. Being in acceptance, right? That we cannot change what's happening with the coronavirus. We can only change our response to it, okay? Number 8 is treat yourself to self-care and coping skills. Okay, so anything that will give you a little boost can help. So it doesn't need to involve spending money. You can also cook yourself something healthy and have a hot bath, listening to a song. These are all forms of self-care. Giving yourself 5 minutes of meditation, walking for 15 minutes, doing yoga for 15 minutes. These are all forms of self-care. Buying yourself some essential oils, using essential oils before you start your meditation practice. Doing pranayama breathing techniques, that's a form of self-care. Reading a book. Maybe you're reading a book about something to do with self-care or just personal development. That's self-care, okay? Number 9, this is the last one. So remember that your anxious state is not permanent. Again, your anxious state is not permanent. So when you are in it, anxiety feels as though it will never end, but it will. And it's hard to remember this, but do try. And I genuinely thought that I would never recover. And even though we are in a public health crisis, I feel calm and have things in perspective. Okay, so it's a worrying time, and many of us, myself included, will have loved ones who might be showing symptoms, but the tendency to jump to the worst case scenario very rarely reflects reality, right? So again, this is catastrophizing when we do this. That's a psychology term. So we want to use mindful self-compassion. We want to be kind to ourselves. We want to tell ourselves that this will pass. And we want to tell ourselves every day that we are doing the best that we can with the skills that we have right now, with what we are dealing with, okay? Because none of us asked for this. None of us could have anticipated this. All we can do is do the best that we can. That's all we can do. And we want to try our best to feed ourselves with self-care in a way that when we come out of this, that we actually can be stronger. We can be stronger mentally, we can be stronger physically, we can be stronger emotionally, we can be stronger spiritually. And that we can choose how we show up for ourselves and taking care of ourselves through this, even though it's super, super, super hard. I am not here to deny that this is not easy. This is probably one of the hardest things, or the hardest things that many of us are going to go through in our lives. So I'm not negating, that this is a hard situation that we're in. But what I am saying is that you can choose your response to it. And you can choose taking care of yourself so that you stay in a healthy mental health state. Because one of my biggest concerns is when we get closer out of this pandemic, the amount of people that are going to have increased anxiety or post-traumatic stress disorder or depression. And I want you to be able to not go to that place, okay? I want you to be able to take care of yourself in a holistic way. And that doesn't mean that you can't take medication. I'm not here to judge or to say not, but what I'm suggesting is there's additional holistic ways that you can take care of your stress and anxiety and depression. And that's what we teach you in WiseMind, Science and Soul of Success Tribe. And that's what we're going to talk to you more about the week of September 14th. Again, Unleash Success, Heal and Detox Stress. You can register at healdetoxsuccess.com. Again, it's healdetoxsuccess.com. It's actually a 9-day series masterclass where you can get into a lot more detail in the page that I just told you about. It'll tell you what we're covering most of the days. It doesn't get into that we're also going to have guest speakers. I'm also going to be doing yoga. I'm going to be doing some live Q&A, and I'm going to be doing master classes. So you want to mark your calendar for September 14th through 18th at 12 noon Eastern time. And then Saturday will go at 10, Sunday at 4, and then back to noon on that Monday and Tuesday, the 21st and 22nd of September. And I'm super excited about this because we're taking what we've done with over 4,000 clients going on 5 years, and we're integrating this into this 5-day masterclass series. Again, Unleash Success, Heal and Detox Stress. And so that's super exciting. So the link is also in the bio for those of you that are on Instagram. Those of you that are here on Facebook, again, that's healdetoxsuccess.com. And that starts September 14th at noon Eastern time. So if you have any questions for those of you that are on Instagram, please feel free to DM me. We do run a mastermind group that we teach yoga psychology, and we do family of origin work. And you can look at that in the bio link. That's WiseMind Yoga Science Soul Success Mastermind. And that is for moms, women looking for holistic mental health and intergenerational healing. It's for wellness coaches, yoga teachers, yoga studio owners, wellness center owners, healthcare professionals that are wanting to integrate yoga, corporate professionals, entrepreneurs, because there's a lot of mindset in there as well. So again, there's a very detailed page that's wisemindyoga.com/success. That's also in the bio link. I will share this with you all as well. wisemindyoga.com/success. And it's got client testimonials and all types of things. So again, I hope this was helpful for you. I want to remind you that calm is contagious and stress and anxiety is contagious. So we can choose to not only help ourselves with our anxiety and our stress, but we can help others, because remember, people feed off of each other's emotions. So if we're in fear and doubt and anxiety, we are potentially going to make other people feel that way as well. Okay, so I hope that you are doing well and you are doing safe. This is going to show up in IGTV as well. So you'll be able to watch the replay there. And there will also be a replay here in the Facebook group and also on the business page. So we are sending you love, light, and blessings. And we will be back here again next Thursday at noon Eastern time. And again, marking your calendar for September the 14th. That will start on a Monday, also at noon Eastern time. And for those of you that join us live, you have the opportunity to actually win a giveaway every day that we're on live, every day. So super excited about that. We'll keep sharing that with you. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Namaste.